If you are looking for some easy, budget-friendly dinner inspiration, then you are in the right place. I've got 5 dinners in this video, and first up, I'm gonna make some buffalo chicken taquitos. So I've had this package of uncooked tortillas in my fridge for a bit. They were about to expire, so I knew that I wanted to cook up the whole package, and that's kind of how I came about making this dish. So since they are uncooked, I'm just gonna cook these in my skillet, a dry skillet, medium heat, just a few seconds on each side until it's bubbly and gets a little golden brown. And here's the whole package cooked up. It didn't take much time. And of course, if you didn't want to use uncooked tortillas, just use a regular package. We just prefer the taste of the other ones. So I did shred up a whole rotisserie chicken, and I even went in with some scissors to chop it up into finer pieces. You're going to grab a bottle of your favorite brand of buffalo sauce. I have always been a big Frank's fan, and I'm not measuring anything. I just poured it in until it looked right to me. I'm also going to add a good amount of some ranch, maybe like a half a cup. And if you prefer blue cheese in your buffalo stuff, like in your buffalo dip, use that instead of ranch, but we prefer the ranch. I'm also going to add in 1 block of some softened cream cheese. I did also shred up a block of sharp cheddar cheese, and I'm adding about half of it. And now I'm just going to fold everything together, basically until that cream cheese is coating everything. I find it easiest to do this with a spatula. And a little tip, if you want to make it go even quicker, is you can zap that cream cheese in the microwave for a few seconds before adding it in here, and yeah, it makes it quicker. So that's what it should look like. I can start assembling the taquitos now. So I'm just going to take a big spoonful of this buffalo chicken mixture. I'm going to place it in the middle of my tortilla, making sure to really spread it out from one end to the other. I'm going to tightly roll that up and then place it same side down on a greased cookie sheet. And my oven is preheated to 450 degrees. Now, you could replace these with corn tortillas as well. I know that would be more authentic for taquitos. I think this is technically a flauta. I think that's how you pronounce it, but I'm still going to call them taquitos. And I don't know if y'all caught that, but I still had quite a bit of that buffalo chicken mixture left over, which I knew that was going to happen. I did it on purpose. Don't worry, it didn't go to waste. We had buffalo chicken dip with it the next day. So like I said, my oven was preheated to 450. I popped those in for 10 minutes, and here I have just pulled it out, and I'm going in with my tongs, and I'm just carefully flipping those over, and I'm going to spray the tops again with some cooking spray. That way it can really crisp up, and it's going to go back in the oven for a final 5 minutes, so just 15 minutes in the oven. So I served it with this Chick-fil-A ranch. I found this at Walmart, and they sell it in the refrigerated section, typically next to like the bagged salad and bagged veggies, and it is a super good ranch. So I definitely wanted to mention that if you're looking for a good ranch. And I just served it with a simple side salad since I had everything on hand to make that. Some lettuce, English cucumbers, and some cherry tomatoes from my dad's garden with a little ranch and pepper. Super good, went perfectly with this. And these buffalo chicken taquitos are always a hit. I've definitely made them before. These just have such great flavor. It's basically a buffalo chicken dip rolled in a tortilla and baked, so you can't go wrong. These are good any time of the day. You could also serve them as an appetizer at a party. Next up, I'm going to make something that has recently caught my eye. It's going to be a taco rice bake. Meals like this is right up my alley. I simply browned up a pound of ground beef. If you have a lot of extra grease in your meat, you definitely want to drain it off. And then I'm going to add in 1 can of some ranch style beans. I'm also going to do 1 can of Rotel. This particular one has lime juice and cilantro in it. I've had that in my pantry for a while. I was glad to finally use that up. And the recipe does call for a can of cream of chicken soup. I decided to swap that for some cheddar cheese soup. I figured that would go better with this, and I really needed to use this up as well. It was actually a little bit expired, but it's a canned food. That doesn't worry me. It looked good, smelled good, and tasted good. I did add in about a half a cup of water. I seasoned it with some onion powder, and you do need a packet of taco seasoning. I like to keep the big containers of taco seasoning on hand. My only complaint is it's a little bit hard to measure it out, but I'm going to stir that together good, get it all nice, and heat it through. I do have this on about a medium-high heat. And here I'm just adding in about a cup of some shredded sharp cheddar cheese. And I'm just going to continue stirring this just until that cheese is melted. In the background, while I was cooking everything, I was also cooking up some white rice. Mine is some white long grain rice. It's actually a jasmine rice, but you can use any rice that you want to. You just need 4 cups of it. So I am using a measuring cup because I cooked up more than what I actually needed. So I'm just going to fold everything together, make sure that rice is really incorporated well into everything. And I have went ahead and greased a 9x13 casserole dish, and I'm just going to plop that right down in there. It slid out like a dream. And I'm going to take the back of my spoon and just get that spread out evenly. I just love me a good casserole, y'all. It's always just so cozy to me, and it usually always has a high success rate. Lastly, I'm just going to hit it with another cup or so of that shredded cheese, and this is going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes until it's nice and bubbly and until that cheese is melted to your liking. And of course, I wanted to give y'all a close-up of the first little scoop there just so that y'all can see how perfect that consistency is. And you can do so many things with this. You can do tacos, burritos, nachos, crunch wraps, whatever you want to, but we always love us a good burrito bowl. So that's how we served it up, and I just topped it with some sour cream. I made a quick homemade guacamole, and I have a lime wedge on the side to squeeze everything with some lime juice, and we just have some tortilla chips on the side to scoop everything up, and it was super good. Such a hit. We all loved it. I think the next time that I make it, I would like to try it with my homemade Mexican rice instead of just plain rice, and then drizzle it with some queso to take it over the top. On this night, I'm going to make one of our absolute favorite dishes, and that is chicken Alfredo. It has honestly been a pretty long time since I have made it, so we were all really looking forward to it, needless to say. So here, I have 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and I've just cubed it up into small little bite-sized pieces. I'm going to go ahead and dump it into a heated skillet that has a little bit of olive oil in it, and I'm just spreading that out into a more even layer before I go in to season it. I don't always cube up my chicken for chicken Alfredo. Sometimes I'll leave it whole and then slice it and put it on top of the pasta, but on this particular day I really wanted to mix it in the sauce and just mix it all together. So I'm seasoning my chicken with some Tony's Creole seasoning, some onion and garlic powder, and some black pepper. Here I'm giving it a good mix to make sure that seasoning is covering all sides of the chicken, and it just takes a few minutes to cook this up. You never want to overcook your chicken. It'll dry it out, make it leathery and tough. Nobody wants that. So as soon as there's no longer any pink and you can tell it's done, has a nice color on it, remove that to a separate bowl. By this point, my water was boiling in the background, so I dropped in my fettuccine pasta. And now we're going to make this sauce, and it comes together really quick. So in that same skillet, with all that extra flavor and seasoning bits on the bottom of the skillet, I'm going to melt down a whole stick of butter. Yes, a whole stick. I'm going to do a spoonful of cream cheese, and I'm going to do this whole pint-sized container of heavy whipping cream. I do have my temperature on about a medium heat, and I'm taking my silicone whisk so I don't scratch my pan to pieces. I'm going to stir it good until that cream cheese is nice and melted. And now I'm going to add in some garlic powder and some Parmesan cheese that I shredded up myself. I would say I added in about a cup of it. Now, fresh garlic is also really good in this. I do that sometimes. You would just cook it with the butter in that first step. Really wasn't thinking this day, and it's really just as good with the garlic powder. So do whichever one you want to there. So I let that simmer for about 5 minutes, I would say. And then here I'm just hitting it with some salt and pepper to taste. My family loves black pepper, especially in a sauce like this. So I added a lot, but if you don't like it, simply leave it out. It'll still be good. So the sauce is done, and I promise you it will be better than any jarred sauce on the shelves. It's amazing. It really is. So here I'm just adding in that cooked pasta that I drained, and I'm also going to add back in that cooked chicken. That way it can start to heat through. Now this is technically enough sauce to probably cover a full box of pasta, but a full box of pasta is just too much for my family of 4. And this is one of those dishes that is best eaten fresh because it doesn't reheat well. That's the only downfall to this Alfredo sauce. If you try to microwave it, it will separate and it will not be pleasant at all. So that's why I do the amount of pasta I do. And, if you want to have that sauce recipe, you totally can. We like things saucy. I did also cook some broccoli on the side, and you can mix that in with your sauce if you want to, but My kids are just now getting to where they'll eat broccoli. They can only handle it in small doses, and my husband doesn't like it in his Alfredo, so that's why I did it separate. I did top it with a little extra Parmesan cheese, and I served it with some garlic bread on the side, and it was absolutely delicious. Next up, I want to show y'all how easy it is to make some really good, crispy southern fried pork chops. So Kroger recently had a pretty good sale on their bone-in pork chops. If you bought a family size pack of them, you got another one for free. So I definitely stocked up, and it inspired me to make this meal. Again, it has been a while, and in my opinion, when you fry pork chops, it's a lot better with the bone in. So I have 4 laid out here. As you can see, they're a really good size, and it's the perfect amount for my family. If you need more, simply cook more. Again, I'm going in with the Tony Creole seasoning to season the meat. I did it on both sides, and then in a separate bowl, I cracked in 2 eggs, and I'm going to add a few dashes of Tabasco to that. It's not going to make it spicy. It's just going to give it a little extra flavor. With my fork, I'm going to whisk those eggs together really good, and this is going to help that breading really stick and not just completely fall apart. So in a pie pan, I've added some flour. Now, I typically use all-purpose for this, but this one is actually self-rising. I don't know if it really matters, but yeah, I had a little bit left. I wanted to use it. I always like to season my flour really well when I'm frying something. So I'm going in with some garlic salt, pepper, onion powder, and I really like to use paprika because of the color that it helps give everything. So with a fork, I mix that together real good. I love frying in my cast iron, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm just adding some vegetable oil. Had to crack open a new bottle, and I'm not deep frying it. I'm going to do a shallow fry, so I don't have to use so much oil. But now I can start breading up the pork chop. So I'm just going to simply take the seasoned pork chop, roll it around in that egg wash, let the excess drip off, and then I'm going to toss it around in that flour a good couple of times to make sure that every crevice of it is completely covered in the seasoned flour. And I'm just going to go ahead and place it back on that parchment paper in the background and wait for my oil to get nice and hot. I can always tell when my oil is ready because it will start to kind of shimmer, and it just gets a certain smell that I'm used to. So as you can see, I'm just carefully dropping those into that hot oil, and it can only fit 3, so I did have to do it in 2 batches. You never want to overcrowd your pan. It is not worth it, I promise you. So I cooked these for just a few minutes on each side. I'd say about 4 minutes per side. And as you can see, the ones up top kind of cooked a little unevenly, which usually doesn't happen. I'm not sure why that happened, but it was driving me nuts. So here I am just kind of rotating it to make sure that it can all be like evenly browned. So that one in the front is perfect. Just look at that. It is absolute perfection. So I did let the other ones go for another 30 seconds more, I would say. As you can see, I'm flipping it over till I got it to my liking, and then we got to cook up that last pork chop. So again, about 4 minutes per side, and it was ready. So we got another perfectly brown, golden, crispy, delicious looking pork chop. So I placed that on a wire rack that is over top of a cookie sheet, and I'm going to pop this in the oven and just let it sit there at 200 degrees. It's not to cook it, it's just to keep it warm, because I am going to make a gravy with the pan drippings, which is something I'm not too confident in. Like, I can make a good breakfast gravy, but when it comes to stuff like this, just makes me a little nervous. So I saved my pickle jars for oil and stuff, and it was such a mess. It was dripping everywhere. Here I am cleaning up my mess. It was making the awfulest noises. I was for sure it was going to just explode everywhere, but thankfully it didn't. So looking at this clip now, I'm just like, girl, what was you thinking? That is way too much oil to cook gravy with. And like, I kind of knew that when I was cooking it, but I was like, I'll make it work, because I was just getting tired of trying to drain some of that grease out, because it was just making such a big mess. But I would definitely do it a little differently next time, but I promise y'all it ended up working out in the end. But I'm adding some of that seasoned flour that I coated the pork chops in into that hot grease. You don't worry, it's going to cook for several minutes, so you don't have to worry about any kind of contamination, salmonella, none of that stuff. And plus it's seasoned, it's going to add extra flavor. So I could tell that wasn't quite enough flour, so I ended up having to use some regular all-purpose flour as well. And by this point, I decided I'm not adding in any more flour. I just knew it didn't look like what I'm used to. But again, I was done adding in flour. I'm just whisking it really good, cooking it for a few minutes, making sure there's no lumps. Now, typically when I make a gravy, I use regular milk. I've had this half and half in my fridge for quite a while. I wanted it gone, so I'm using half and half. For the first part, I actually ended up having to use regular milk as well. And as you can see, here's where it started to become a hot mess. I did have the temperature on low at this point, believe me or not, but cast irons hold their heat really well, and it was thickening up so fast. Like, I was getting scared here. I had to turn off the camera and focus, but I just kept stirring, kept adding in milk. And also, like, you don't have to use milk. You can use water. You could use chicken broth, beef broth, vegetable broth. It doesn't matter. Just some sort of liquid. But as you can see, it all worked out. Here, I'm just seasoning it with some salt and pepper to taste. The only problem was this is enough gravy to feed an army, and all I have is those 4 little pork chops. So either way, it tasted so good. Here's my plate. I've got one of those pork chops, and of course, I spooned plenty of the gravy over top with extra black pepper. I made it some homemade mashed potatoes. Of course, I've got the gravy on that too. And I just made some green beans to go along with it. The perfect sides to go with it, and these pork chops turned out so good. Like I said, I don't typically make this type of gravy for my pork chops that are good just on their own, but I wanted to make it a little extra special, and all the frustration was definitely worth it. Highly recommend this meal. It's always a hit. Lastly, I had these hot dog buns in my pantry that, once again, I really needed to use up, so we're going to do some classic chili cheese dogs, another one of our favorites that we don't do that often. So I'm not going to go into too much details there. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I knew that I wanted to do like a different side dish to go with it. We typically do French fries or chips with chili cheese dogs, but I knew I wanted something with potatoes. This is going to be some pesto, Parmesan, lemon, roasted potatoes. I thought it sounded super good. So I just have a pound of these little baby potatoes of all different colors. I have washed those really well, and I'm just getting each of those cut in half. I did have to transfer those to another mixing bowl because the butter bowl just wasn't cutting it, wasn't big enough. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've bought the Great Value pesto, and I thought it was just as good as the name brand, so I would definitely repurchase that. I definitely used more pesto than what the recipe called for, but we just love it, so I figured it wouldn't hurt. I did season it with some garlic salt, not too much because pesto is pretty salty. I did some pepper, stirred that together real good, and I dumped that out onto a greased cookie sheet, and I'm just getting that spread out more evenly. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees, and I popped that in for 20 minutes. Then I pulled it out, and I'm grabbing my favorite block of Parmesan cheese, and I am just simply shredding it over all of the potatoes. You can add as little or as much as you want. I'm sure you could do the bottled kind, but I just really recommend the fresh stuff. It is just so good on everything. I'm going to pop that back in the oven for a final 10 minutes, and they should be fork tender by that point. Mine were, but everyone's oven is different, so just check it. If it's tender like you like it, you can finally just drizzle on about half of a lemon, the juice of it, of course, and it just really brightens these up and so flavorful. So here's my plate. Instead of regular cheese, I'm using this queso sauce by Old El Paso. One of you guys recommended it to me, and I have just been loving it. It went really well with this, and I always have to drizzle ketchup on my roasted potatoes, but they were such a hit. I love taking dishes that we already love and just changing up the flavors. Went so well with this, and I can see it going good with literally anything. But that is all I got for y'all in today's video. Really hope y'all enjoyed it and found some new ideas. I want to thank y'all so much for watching. I hope that you all have the best weekend, and I'll see y'all in my next one.